Oh, he's made it. There he is, Lance. Good deal. Good morning, everybody. We're having a little fun with our St. Patrick's Day. Hi, Steve. Hey, William. Hi, Valerie.
How are ya?
We're fantastic. We're awake.
No kidding.
Oh, my goodness. So glad you guys have made it. This may be the most important topic we'll be talking about right now. All right, we'll wait a few more seconds and we're going to get rolling. Hi, Mike. Thank you so much for being here this morning. I really appreciate it. All right, so we're going to get rolling. And I'm going to thank you guys for being here. We got some more folks coming in. But yeah, I'm just looking in chat. Need to grab a pint.
Well, it is 7:01 a.m., so I
Come
guess.
on.
I don't know. Come on.
Well, that makes it like what, 5 there or no or noon? So close
I
enough.
love it. I love it so
Exactly.
much.
Exactly, Lance. Perfect math.
Okay, so I rebooted my computer this morning and Zoom updated, and I have new buttons in new places. It's fantastic. All right, I just want to be sure you guys can see my screen, okay?
Yes.
Perfect. I'm hitting record. All right, so thank you guys for being here. Excited about today. It really is one of the most important topics that we're going to be talking about. And I'm going to figure out how to advance my screen here for just a second. Okay. My screen share is recording. Thanks for your patience. I got some new buttons this morning. So I'm going to stop share actually, and I'm going to reshare. I got a couple of fun announcements, but really, this is one of the most important topics. We're talking today about adaptability. And we send out a weekly email, and the weekly emails this month have been about learning styles. If you're not receiving those, would you let us know? That would be so helpful because we want to be sure that you're getting those. And I wanted to go deeper today, more than just leadership styles, which is so important because we really don't want to tackle the world with a hammer. We want Home Depot. You won't have access to all those different leadership styles. But at the core of that is this concept of adaptability, which I think is the most important thing we need to be talking about right now. I love this from Leaderonomics. They say by 2026, leadership won't be defined by hierarchy, title, or tenure. It'll be defined by human connection, adaptability, and the wisdom to lead alongside technology, not against it. We were at a conference last week in Houston, and it was all about AI. And so it goes on to say the leaders who will matter most are not the ones who know everything, but the ones who are willing to learn, to experiment, and stay deeply human in the middle of change, which, by the way, is going to trigger your brain big time. If there was ever a time for leaders to rise with courage, clarity, and humanity, it's now. And I wanted to address about 3 different questions this morning. And also, I asked Mike to join us today because I can't think of anybody better to talk about this concept of adaptability. But what I wanted to address, just if you walk away with maybe some new insight around where is change asking you to adapt right now? For being honest, where are you being asked to adapt? Another question, where do you need to unlearn? I think that may be one of the most important things is what is it that I've got to unlearn? And again, gonna trigger because what you know feels familiar. And then finally, what's just one adjustment that you can make this week? Couple of announcements before we jump fully into this idea of adaptability. We're launching a program called Next Gen Professionals. There's a lot of good research right now that this the Gen X having a little bit of a difficult time transitioning in. Or you might have hired some new grads and you wish that you could just get them to that next level of professionalism just a little bit faster. And that's the intent behind this program. If you're interested in learning more, we're going to launch this second week of May. If you're interested in learning more for someone that you have on board or you've just hired, let us know. I think it's something that would be really helpful, not only for those who are in leadership roles that may be a little bit frustrated because these new grads are not coming on as quickly as maybe you'd hoped, or if you are the new grad and you just want to get there a little bit faster, that's the intent behind this. Then we have a big announcement for April 20th. Here's our awesome video that Patty put together for us. And a couple of weeks ago, I got to do something I've been wanting to do for about 20 years, which is get my brain scanned. And we have two of their really most renowned doctors that are going to be with us on April 20th. And that's Dr. Meinhardt and Dr. Lajardi. And what they're going to do is they're going to take my SPECT image, which is a powerful brain imaging tool that allows you to see where your brain's working too hard, where it's not working hard enough. And they're really going to be talking about how to get your brain to peak performance over your lifetime. The cool thing about SPECT is it can determine almost 10 years in advance of the first symptom of dementia. So if you're looking, if you've always been curious about what SPECT imaging is or what you could learn from it, then join us. We're going to be there, and it's in Irving. We'll get that address out too. Actually, we have the link to register. Somebody could put that in chat. You may already have. But it was super fun. And not only did I get my brain scanned, but I got to do a lot of assessments. And I haven't done assessments in a really long time. So I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit nervous because you guys are going to find out the results of my SPECT image at the same time I do. And so it may be a career killer. I'm not sure. But if I'm going out teaching, then I'm willing to go out. That's what it's all about. So anyway, I hope that you can join us. That's April the 20th. And it's going to be from 6 to 8. It's free, but the room is small. So there's only so many seats in the room. So hopefully you can join us. That'd be just fantastic. I'm really excited about that night. Then again, that's been something that I've wanted to do for a really long time. Okay. I wanted to just talk about this adaptability a minute, and then I'm going to ask Mike some questions. But you could just look at the speed at which technology is advancing. And if we're ignoring that, it's going to be to our own fault. Like, we really need to realize how quickly everything is moving. I don't know how many more things we can go through. Like we've had increase in technology. We had COVID. Now we've got AI. And I just thought you'd find this interesting, that it took 75 years for the telephone to reach 1 million users. I grew up on a party line on telephones. And if you don't know what that is, that means you had to listen for your ring. You had a unique ring. And even then, you had several of your neighbors that were on the same line. So you couldn't all use the phone at once. You'd have to trade off. So if you pick up and somebody else is on the line, you had to wait your turn. And I know that sounds like ancient, but it wasn't that long ago, I promise you. So it took the telephone 75 years to reach 1 million users. It took the television 13 years to reach 1 million users. And the look of that television right there with the rabbit ears, raise your hand if you can relate to that, where you had to stand just right or put foil or something on it so it would get good reception. And at its best, we had maybe, I don't know, 5 channels. Three channels, William. It took the internet 7 years to reach 1 million users. You can imagine how fast things are moving once we are all online and we are so-called connected. It took Facebook 10 months to reach 1 million users. Instagram, it took 2.5 months to reach 1 million users. And I'm trying to pull up my chat. But if you had to guess, how long did it take ChatGPT to reach 1 million users? Drum roll, 5 days. 5 days to reach 1 million users. And so we know that things are moving quickly. So much so that there's actually a new term. If you're not familiar with it, you need to be. And it's adaptability quotient. Because leadership is really shifting from static expertise to how quickly and how well you can adapt. So IQ, back in the day, allowed us to see how smart we were. EQ was asking, how are you smart? And today we're talking about AQ, adaptability IQ, which is how can you use your IQ and EQ to match what the moment requires. And a couple of more things because I'm a word nerd, but adaptability is a very interesting word. It isn't just changing. So sometimes we use interchangeably flexibility and adaptability. They're different. Adaptability isn't just being able to be fluid and changing in the moment. It's actually making yourself fit for a new reality, which is really powerful. And it's the ability to recognize when conditions have changed, ideally to be able to recognize before conditions have changed, that you're always looking ahead. And then once you realize things are changing, we call that in coaching when you can as is it. But sometimes the only problem we have is our problem to accept reality, but to recognize when reality has changed, and then to be able to adjust our beliefs and our behavior accordingly to thrive in that new environment. So, spoiler alert on this, it's going to require unlearning. It's going to require pivoting, and it's going to require at times redefining. Now, your brain is not going to like this because we all have FOBU, the fear of being uncertain or unfamiliar or uncomfortable. But what we've got to recognize is that we just need to recognize. Notice what you notice. When you get that feeling of FOBU, just acknowledge it for what it is because it's your brain trying to protect you. Your brain's always asking the question, am I safe? And what feels safe is certainty and familiar and comfort. So the first thing is that we're going to be able to have to do is recognize where our beliefs need to change. And that's hard because it really is like fish in the water. As someone last week said, it's hard to read the label when you're in the jar. So we just have to recognize where our beliefs need to change. And when we can shift our beliefs, we also have to know where we need to shift, where our actions need to shift. That's going to be tricky too because there's so much noise. I mean, you think about LinkedIn and all the social media platforms, all the information that's coming at us so fast. Do this, do that, learn this, get this certification. It's just coming at us so fast. We're going to have to be able to know exactly where we need to shift because you could shift in so many different directions. So, what is the right shift that you need to make? And then the third thing that I wanted to just talk about here is then you have to have the courage to jump. And ideally, when it comes to work, you're in an environment where that's encouraged. It's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to maybe take a risk. If you're running your own show, like that's going to be really uncomfortable, but we have to have the courage to put that into action. And so when I was thinking about this topic, I couldn't think of anybody better to come on and talk about this because Mike's not only been able to do this for himself, but to be able to lead an entire organization through adaptability. So, Mike is the CEO of Hill Wilkinson. And if anybody's getting it right culture wise, they're nailing it. And they're general contractor, and they work in a lot of different spaces in the construction world. But the thing that I'm always most impressed with is their culture and their loyalty and the years of service that is on the wall when you walk in. They truly are best place to work repeatedly over and over. And it's genuine. And I walk into a lot of places that might have that sign up, but you realize once you get in that the behavior doesn't necessarily align with the accolades, and you wonder where that might have come from, but they really are. So, Mike, thank you for joining us. And the other thing that I want to thank you for is he is on spring break and he's in Colorado. So, William's in Colorado too. So he was willing to be able to spend a minute with us on his spring break. So welcome, Mike, to this amazing group of people that are together this morning. And I'm just going to really stop share for a second because I want to spotlight you. And I guess the first thing that I'm trying to pin that, yeah, so we can hear from you. So, Mike, thank you for joining us and talk to us, if you wouldn't mind, just about how looking back on your journey, when you realized that maybe you needed to adapt.
Yeah, I was thinking about that while you were talking. Um, I think that there's maybe two different roads with that. Personally, I think, you know, as you're coming up in a business or starting to learn maybe some skills around whatever industry you're in, you get to a point, hopefully, that you're a good doer, and I think you get accolades for being a good doer, and I think that becomes promotions and things like that. I think for me, it was knowing at what point, what things I was doing that had gotten me to that point weren't going to work anymore. And I think I wasn't scalable. I was good at doing A, B, and C. I wasn't as good at coaching and training and building out bigger and bigger teams. And I think, Sherry and I have had this conversation before. I wanted to, I draw the hourglass sometimes. I was looking up a lot and making sure that everybody in the organization knew what I could do. And I wasn't looking down as well and or training. And I think I stalled for a little while. When you hear people say, I feel like I'm stuck in this business, they're stuck in that part where they were a good doer and they've yet to kind of become a good manager or a good leader. And I think when you talk about being adaptive, I mean, the hardest thing for me was trying to scale myself and give up control. And I think, you get again, you get promoted time and time again because of what you can do. And I think you start to realize how much bigger of a shift you can make when you can get 20, 30, 50, 100 people kind of coming up with better ideas than what you could come up with. It's just that it's like that light bulb goes off and you're wondering what in the heck you were doing the last 10 years. So um, on the personal side, that's one thing. On the business side, I think, you know, once you see that in action, I think personally, you're much more apt to be able to pivot. But then it's like you have this whole other force against you, which not everyone wants to pivot. No one wants to change. When you start scaling these ideas around, 100 people, whether it's 20 or 100 or 200 or 500 in our case, getting those folks to pivot into an area is really difficult. And so I think, depending on where you are in business, whether you have a large team or maybe you're in that hourglass right now trying to figure out how to, lead uh, people versus do, um, you kind of go into this mode. I use I'm going to say a lot of one-liners. They make sense to me, so hopefully they make sense to you. And there was some old, like with the foil on TV and some old interesting comments already. I picture you steering the Titanic, which everyone has heard that, right? You can't turn the Titanic. I try to tell people you're steering the Titanic, but then you got one of those like 1990s clubs, that used to go on the steering wheel to keep somebody from,
Yeah.
stealing your car. So you're trying to steer the Titanic and you got the club on there. That's how hard you can turn an organization at one time. So it's not enough that you are comfortable with pivoting. You have to spend a ton of time um, getting the masses comfortable with change. And I think when you think you're communicating the why, you're probably not doing it enough. I mean, it's almost like you got to be a broken record to a degree about why you're pivoting. And keep in mind, your pivot is like 2 degrees. But people will, it's like that whole Titanic, and you start turning just 2 degrees and everybody's like, are we turning? And so people recognize the turn no matter how slight it is. And I think that was a huge challenge for me. And so it was realizing that I needed to pivot. And then you start getting good at that. Then you become very comfortable with change. But then you're like the cat with the laser, chasing it all over the ground because whatever's new you're going to do. And everybody's looking at you like, I just figured out what you wanted to do last week. Now we're doing something else. So you got to be very careful about how you're deciding where you want to go, uh, and in reality, how you're creating a place where your people are deciding where they want to go, and all you're doing is kind of making sure that they're comfortable with change or that they're having good conversation and and honestly, where I've kind of landed more and more, I don't really care where we end up pivoting. I just care about alignment, and so if you've got everybody pulling sort of in the same direction, it's much better than people kind of pull. So it's just interesting how my psyche has changed over time and what I value. And even while I'm sitting in a meeting, it's just reiterating that with people. It's just like, hey, I just care about alignment. If you guys feel like this is the right direction to go, then let's go. When we walk out the door, that's where we're headed, and I think you just spend an incredible amount of time trying to communicate around safety, around alignment, around just being comfortable, being a little bit uncomfortable, but that you're there as kind of that safety net. Like, hey, we're fine. We're not gonna, totally reinvent our whole business, and we've seen this a bunch in in the construction world from just pick a recession, on where all these companies have pivoted. And I would argue that, even before COVID, we were going into a recession. We could see it, in our world. And it's just COVID just made it happen a lot faster, but it was very short. And so I think there was a lot of pivoting that happened there, but the real pivot became when interest rates started to go up, and I think lots of big parts of our business were affected by interest rates. Just think about,
Yeah.
the housing market sitting today, right? And so with somebody who's going to develop an office building when they're at 7.5% interest rate. It just doesn't pencil out. And so, getting the right people in the room to discuss where you're headed and where we need to, in our terms, kind of pour gas on different parts of your business. And it's hard to predict, and just know that you're not going to be right with everything. But getting your top 30, 40, for us, it's around 40 people that are executives. If you have a 20-person team and you got 4 or 5 execs, getting that leadership group to be a part of thinking strategically about where the opportunities are, and maybe even more importantly, where the opportunities aren't. And I think the adage of what got you there doesn't get you there. And I think it's just very difficult for people to unwire where you've made money the last 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, or where you've had success. It's very difficult to unwire that. And I think in our world, it's like that, it's like slow moving lava coming down a mountain. We do not move fast anywhere. You're right. And so again, that 1.5 or 2 degree turn is as hard as you're going to turn somewhere. And if you're uncomfortable with change, it may feel like you're making a 180-degree turn. You're not doing that. Your business can't move that fast. People aren't going to move that fast. It's just the way it is. But if you can get that leadership team to be a part of, or the majority of, the decisions and the discussion about where the opportunities are and where the opportunities aren't in your business, you just created many more speakers and or like microphones for your business, for them to communicate down into your business versus just you. Excuse me. Oh, and so if you can get your top execs really helping drive the communication, it works. Outside of just you, standing up at your town hall meeting saying, "Hey, this is where we're going now," and everybody's looking around going, what's wrong with where we've been?" And so there's just a whole process of how you over communicate safety, and hey, we're not going to change who we are culturally. This is the way we're going to protect, why we're going this way, because it's going to provide more opportunity. It's going to be, the org chart can change. We can be more linear. There's all these benefits around packaging change, some form of change to your business that is not, BS. I mean, people are, sitting at your town hall meeting, looking at each other, nudging each other, and saying, what are we talking about? Right? You got to spend an incredible amount of time on the why. And I think for us, we had some bad jobs in around 2014, 15, 16. And we hired a lot of people coming out of the recession in '08. And our size projects, the recession really hit us in 2010 and 11 because of the lag of kind of how big projects kind of get started, and when the rug got pulled out from underneath of everyone in '08, it took almost 2 years for that to really affect us. So we had a a glimpse into the future to where we could change a little bit, but at the same time, I don't think we were ready for how fast it bounced back, especially in Texas. And I think we were not equipped to hire, train, do orientation. We were not internally organized well enough to do what we did coming out of the recession. And we put people on the wrong jobs. We put people in the wrong roles. We had managers that were not communicating well and leading well in that role. And like I said, it was like lava coming down this mountain very, very slow. It took 3 or 4 years for that to play out on whether we were going to be successful on our projects or not. And so I think
Wow.
the part that I would maybe say is, as I was coming up the business, you're ready for and I bet most of the people on this call are not as are a little bit more time sensitive to want returns, or if I do this, I want to get this kind of return in a quicker manner than 3 or 4 years. It's just the bigger your business is, if you want it to be bigger, it's just the longer that payoff timeline is, and or bad moves, the longer that sometimes takes to come to fruition. And so the patience that you need to have as a leader to let that play out and not just pivot again. And so then pretty soon you're just turning and turning and turning. It's just you gotta let the machine that you've created kind of it's got to work through the system, you know. And so for us, we had some bad decisions around hiring too quickly, coming out of '08, and it took 3 or 4 years to have that work through the quote unquote system. And I think outside of having a couple of bad jobs, the real issue that happened for us, and you talk about adaptability, we kind of shrunk mentally. I think around oh, we can't be successful in that type of work. Well, it wasn't really about shrinking that was the biggest issue. It was about we we didn't really understand what the true issue was. It was the people that we were hiring and the internal process, lack of internal processes and orientation and bad culture hires and things like that that were the real issue. It wasn't the type of work or where the work was and so I think we kind of took the easy, I think, low-hanging fruit reasons why that wasn't a successful projects. And it handicapped us for a little while. And so you just move forward and go into COVID, I think we're wildly successful still, and did a really, really good job with retainment during COVID. But I think that one of the most critical pivots that we did was getting together in 2020. We really started planning in 21 and we did it in 22, was a little deeper dive on strategic planning um, that there was more focused, I think, externally where we wanted to go. I think a lot of times when we were doing strategic planning, we were more, okay, what process do I got to put in place and what this and what that? And we were confusing strategic planning with maybe internal tactics on what we would have to do as a business in order to get to ABC location. And so I think that was one of our best pivots in how we did it and how inclusive we were with how many mid-level managers that we brought in as being part of the process. I think there was 50 middle managers that came in, and it was just like, where could we go? Right? Those are the questions. We didn't even have any of the executive team in there. We wanted to create a safer place of growth is okay. And if we grow, what are your concerns about growth? And there was a lot of discussion around culture and a lot of discussion around, structurally, just, what has made us successful in the past. And I think that was we captured that feedback, brought it to that executive team, and where that executive team couldn't deny what the masses were worried about and or were okay with. And so we had this huge challenge internally around growing, because most people equated growth with it was going to change our culture. And so we had this very interesting like push-pull for a number of years. And I think how we were able to do that in 22, we're seeing the rewards now. Again, the lava coming down the mountain. It takes years to kind of get the processes in place. And I think now we're kind of we're in this pivot again, and we're game planning our strategic planning again. It's been 3 or 4 years, and the big idea for us, and it's a two-pronged concept, is we're wanting to go build data centers and AI computing centers. Uh, I mean, it is a smoking hot industry, and obviously, I know a lot of y'all on the phone. You get you get blasted with all kinds of marketing materials around. Well, this is the new AI here, and this, and just all this, all kinds of stuff. And I liken it back to that cat with the laser. You got to have a plan, right? And you got to have a part of your company has have a, if you don't have an AI committee, you need one. And that AI committee needs to be made up of operators in your business, leaders, mid-level folks, and to where, again, you get more speakers into your business of, because you have one of two things. Either you have younger folks coming up in your business that are looking to work somewhere else because they don't think you're on the forefront enough with technology. And then you have people in your business that have been in the business a while and they were like, AI is going to take my job. And like those are the ends of the spectrum. And how you assemble a committee that is really talking about the hard questions. Hey, where are we headed? What can we pilot? Uh, what softwares we're currently using today all around your business? What is their stance on AI? Because that's really the deal. I think everybody talks about Chat GPT. I mean, it's, we use, can't even, I think it's like 90 some softwares across our business, right? And so we're in the mode of analyzing each one of those companies, if they're getting rolled up, if what things they're working on with AI, because that's where it's going, right? All of these softwares that are tailored for your business is they are either getting left out or that they're on the forefront trying to figure out plugins and revisions, or they're rolling up other companies to provide a suite that's going to keep up. Having a policy around your people on how they can use Chat GPT, love it. I think you need a policy with that on especially uploading information, but it's like that we're focused on more of a strategic plan around current softwares, dropping them or expanding them in different ways, cleaning up our data, right? I mean, you can't really utilize AI unless you have cleaner data, and Excel is not it, right? We have a lot of we have a lot of Excel things that we use. So there's these huge lifts. Again, we have a 4-year plan to try to get ready to incorporate AI, right? It's not tomorrow. It's not, oh, there's this new whiz bang thing that's going to change it just doesn't work that way. I mean, we've been piloting different things that can take off, square footage of carpet directly out of drawings, right? We've been piloting that for a couple of years. So there's all these little things, right? And there's strategy around your teams knowing you're doing that, which is helping your younger population thinking, okay, yeah, this company is seeing the future. And then like I said earlier, you got to spend a lot of time around, hey, just because we have this software that can take off carpet doesn't mean we're not going to have an estimator. Here's what we think the new role of estimator is going to be over the next 2, 3, 4 years, right? So you started to communicate that. And so, I find that years ago I thought you would be more of the decision maker. By golly, we can pivot 90 degrees. We're agile. It's just not that way. And the higher up you go and the bigger your organization is, again, it's the Titanic with the club, right? And you got to be able to get on the microphone and make sure everybody's comfortable about how fast you're turning. Titanic's a bad example for this, but
A ship that didn't sink.
that people are comfortable with where you're going and knowing that most people aren't on calls like this. They don't want they want they want comfort in knowing the business is sound. They want to make sure that they're going to get paid on Fridays. They want to make sure that they like doing a lot of some of the remedial things that AI is going to do one day. And so how to think about what their new role could be, how to think about communicating to your people around okay, we can use this technology to grow without burning out our people. We could grow without adding people necessarily. So there's a lot of ways to start, I think, communicating down those lines to your people about because there's a ton of fear right now with AI, and I think you have people that are super excited about it, and then you have people that are very afraid of it. And I don't think there's a lot of people in the middle. So I think as a leader, you got to really try to balance those two without freaking everybody out. So I just talked a whole lot. I can keep just rambling, or you can tell me what other questions you want. But
Whenever I hear Mike talk, I take pages of notes. So I will say this. You shared something with me that was so powerful. It's in the book. And by the way, you just went through all 7 strategies, my cranium strategy, all 7 strategies and how you lead change. I mean, that was really good. But one of the things that you told me was you can have control or you can have growth, but you can't have both in equal proportion at the same time. And I guess, my question for you here is what are just a couple of, because we have about 4 minutes left, but what are just a couple of things that were the most powerful unlearning for you?
personally, it was just realizing that the fact that I was good at something uh, did not matter anymore. It just doesn't. And I think from an ego perspective, understanding that you're really good at A, B, and C, it just doesn't matter, because you're not scalable. And I think realizing that you aren't as good as what you think you are, um, and even if you are good at one thing, right, or one piece of the business, um, just looking in the mirror and realizing that um, no matter how good you are at that, you can only do it 100%, right? Uh, if you can get 5 people to do it 75% as good as you, you've already tripled yourself. Like that concept is real. And I think until people understand that, and in order to let people do things that they're in your eyes doing it 75% as good as you, which is probably not reality. There's in other people's eyes, they're probably doing it better than what you were. That's the whole ego thing. And I think when you realize that moment, you start spending so much time on a process and coaching and teaching. And why I say coaching is when there is an issue or an error, bringing people back in, retraining, recoaching, giving them the same amount of rope. They will measure the rope. If you gave them 10 feet of rope the first time, they mess something up, you come back in, you train them and you coach. And you give them 9 foot 11 inches of rope, they're like, he doesn't trust me anymore. Right. So you've got to give them the same amount of rope, maybe more after there's been mistakes. That is a big issue that I had. And I see it all the time with people, you know what? I'll just do it. When people do that, they're unscalable. Right. And that it's a trait that I had. It's a trait that a lot of your best people in your business actually have. When you look at your business, you're like, oh, that person's an up and comer. It's just, that person's awesome. Well, I'll bet they probably have all the same issues that I just got done saying. Right. If you got to spend an incredible amount of time around those people and demystifying kind of what it is to be successful. Because a lot of them will leave your business if you don't, because they don't know what else to do. They're stuck. I used to draw a picture for people with a bunch of steps going up the side of the mountain, and there's this huge canyon, and then across the canyon, it's one step higher on the other side of the canyon. Most people become a project manager or a divisional manager or a group manager or whatever it is. They're getting promoted. They're doing all these things. Well, it's all because of being a good doer, right? Then they get to that top step and they can't figure out how to get over the canyon because they're thinking about all the stuff that got them there and how you promoted them to get there. They 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 have no education around how to get across the canyon, because across the canyon is leadership, right? And so I think as leaders, it's our job to educate that person long before they get to the edge of the cliff, because they're just looking to go somewhere where they can be a quote unquote an executive or a manager, and they're destined for failure. They've not understood how to scale themselves. They don't understand how to manage people. They don't understand how to create safety around their people and all the things that we were just talking about. And so I just think um, it's a big deal for me because I fought that. I was stuck in our business many times, and I think if you can figure out a way to just unstuck people, uh, just generally around management, and then this whole front around AI and just technology in general, and just the future. I think you also have to spend a lot of time, I think, with your people to try to get them unstuck there too, about, okay, this is not going to happen as fast as I know on your sheet it's saying, Chat GPT, there's a million people that there's I think it's going to take longer for you to incorporate the right forms of AI into your business, because it needs to help you. It can't just be a nicety, and we've spent our technology budget is so much larger than it's ever been. And I laugh because there's no ROI that we've seen, right? And so I think we're about to see one with AI in the next couple years. The last time that there was an ROI was the smartphone. That was the last thing that I have seen, right? That it truly made it changed business, right? It just changed everything. But everybody got it. Everybody could go buy it all at the same time. There was really no strategy. It's like, okay, we have this now, right? There was no way to differentiate yourself. There was no, right? It's just, and I think there's going to be things with AI that level the playing field. Similarly, your competitive advantage you had today might not be there, right? The basic parts of your business, whatever that is, might get leveled a little bit. And so we're trying to think about, okay, what are the things in our business that our clients want that AI can't replace, right? So it's how you communicate, how you handle conflict. For us, it's like really truly understanding how buildings come together. It's just that I don't think we're going to see robots build buildings in my lifetime. Maybe, but I don't think we're going to. And so we're trying to find like those pillars in our business that aren't going away, and really training hard around those pillars that we feel like our people need to have these skill sets. Um, because otherwise I don't know how you differentiate yourself. And so that's kind of like a big strategic planning for us around AI. Is obviously there's lots of conversation around all parts of your business on how it can help you be more efficient, but be careful because everybody's getting that, right? And so there could be a leveling that I think could happen, which is very interesting. Now, I don't think that leveling is going to happen in 12 months. It's just, our job is to be 5 to 10, looking out. And I think we have roles in our business that probably they might exist, but what they do in 5 years from now, they're just going to look totally different than what we do today. But we'll say, if you think about AI and you think about a manager, they still have to have the skills that a manager does. You have to, one, identify the problem you're trying to solve for, right? AI does not help you unless you're asking the right question, right? You have to train the model, right? You have to feed in the right information, just like you have to train an employee, right? So it's the same kind of management. And then if it don't quite get the output that you're after, you gotta ask redefining questions, right? And or maybe more training. It's the same thing as what we're doing today as a good manager, feeding information to your people, asking the right questions, training more if they're not getting the right output. It's the same concepts. It's just they're doing it with technology. And so I don't think the skills of management, quote unquote, are ever going to go away. If anything, they're going to they're going to become 10x more important, I think, because you're losing that personal touch potentially because there's more and more people that want disconnection in a way. You know, they value being able to do A, B, and C, whether that's at their house or remote or in their cubicle. But I think the power of the manager in the next 5 years is going to be so critical because you still have to critically think. You still have to ask the right questions. You still got to identify the problems that you're going to be faced as a business, and that's never going to go away. And so those are kind of some of the ideas around technology that we're talking about. And I think back to just over communicating that you're somewhat on maybe not the bleeding edge, but somewhere in the middle of that spectrum on technology. Uh, because I think if you're in the stone ages or the bleeding edge, I think you're alienating part of your company, right? On one end of the spectrum, either folks that are like, man, I don't even want to have a computer, to then folks that want, a new app or new software every 10 days. And we have that in our company. And it's just trying to manage both of those with the risk reward, over communicate around what your policy and strategy is there. But anyway.
Thank you, Mike. Just key takeaways for me is the patience and recognizing that you're not going to get that immediate return, that we're in it for the long game. We did put a handout in chat. It's just a little personal adaptability survey with a few questions to ponder for yourself. And I just think I so appreciate you being here because you're modeling what it looks like to be adaptable in a way that brings people along with you. And the proof is the amount of loyalty and retention that you've been able to create in what you're doing. For those of you who've got to get back out into the cruel world, thank you for being here. I appreciate it so much. We're here as a resource for you. But if you want to hang around and ask Mike a couple of questions, maybe we'll get him for a few more minutes before his family wakes up from spring break. So I'm going to stop our recording, but we're hanging on if you want to stick around and just ask a couple of questions.